And good evening, everybody. Yes, it's take two. We tried to start our program yesterday, but we got some very bad feedback. There was not a very good connection to my guest out in British Columbia. So I'm going to start again. Good evening to everybody. Welcome back to Live and Uncut. This is episode number 105. And my guest today is Kevin Light from British Columbia in Canada. Kevin, welcome back to my show.
Thank you, Paul. I apologize about yesterday.
Yeah, it's an absolute hazard. Thank you so much for being able to reschedule so we could get this show out to some potential watchers, because there was quite a good response when I posted that you were going to be my guest. Kevin, it's great to have an Olympian, a gold medalist as well on my show. That's a first, which is absolutely fantastic. So what I want to do first of all, though, is I always ask this first question. Can you remember the first camera in your household when you were a kid?
Yeah, well, I think it was a video camera actually. That
okay.
my dad was nice enough to just let me play with it. So you get some situations where it's like, well, it's a expensive piece of equipment, leave it alone, and he never did that. So it started off experimenting and being creative with a video camera. And it stayed with the video camera all the way until I started kind of getting more serious into rowing. So
okay,
yeah.
So through school and through college, did the video camera stay with you? But through that, was there sort of an inkling to sort of get into still life photography?
Yeah, there was, mainly because it was easier to put down the camera or pick it up and just take a moment than there was to take maybe a minute or two of video, because it was really taking you out of what I was there to do. Whereas with the camera, you could just take a quick moment and put it away and refocus. So yeah, that was.
So through school, what were your subjects which you enjoyed most?
Well, I went to university. Well, at high school, it was definitely anything athletically inclined or art. So painting, did a lot of painting in high school. Not a lot of photography, really. And then as I started to get involved at the university level, there was some more art classes and, of course, more athletic classes. And as things picked up with the university and on to the national team, that's when the things started to transition a little bit more into the full-on still. And I was using slide film actually in around 2000, 2001.
Okay. Yeah. So although the digital age was really sort of starting to kick off there, you were still basically well entrenched in film and slide photography.
A little bit. I mean, I got the first digital right before the Athens Olympics in 2004. And just because those transition times from sort of 2000 to 2004, we'd always be taking the digital picture and you'd say, okay, and there would just be the delay and it just seemed kind of clunky still for the consumer. So I waited till 2004 before the first digital camera I bought. Okay,
so let's just go back a little bit. You get into you've decided you're going to go to, as we call it, university or high school, college, whatever your term is over in Canada. There, what were you lining up to study in university?
It was mainly I was going there for rowing, because the University of Victoria here on Vancouver Island is right next to the national team training center for the men. So I wanted to progress, and that I was still 18 when I graduated high school. So I picked, teaching. So phys ed and art, that's what I was going to be, a teacher. And that allowed me to kind of follow my passion a little bit. But I do enjoy teaching, and I did coach rowing for a few years after retiring. But it was just so I could mainly row for the team.
This is interesting because it sounds to me rowing is obviously part of your life before you went to university, unlike a lot of guys that from our country that I'm aware of when they go to Cambridge or Oxford, they pick up rowing. So rowing was already part of your life before you went to university.
It was just a little bit before, because I was a hockey player, or I should say ice hockey player. because my coach is actually from Britain in Marlow. So whenever his name was Mike Sprackland, so whenever we would talk about hockey, he would correct us and say ice hockey. So
ice hockey, exactly.
I should say ice hockey. But I had a bad knee injury which required surgery, and I thought that rowing would be a good rehabilitation exercise. But I ended up being quite good at rowing quite early. So there was a bit of a transition between hockey and rowing, but and I started in grade 12. Yeah.
So I know a little bit about rowing from terms with regards to the recent success of the British team over the last four Olympics. Mm-hmm. So where was your specific interest in rowing? Were you in the doubles or or was it mainly the 8 that you eventually stayed with?
It was mainly the 8. I mean, we rowed in the 8 at the World Championships and really all the way through from 2000 to 2012. And there was a few mixes in there when I would row in the pair. That happened a couple years, but we would always train in the singles and in the pairs actually, and then row in the 8. So the 8 was the main event that we competed in internationally. Yeah.
I'm always amazed as regards to everyone has a specific position in the 8. So what number were you, and what was your role in that position? This is where I get a bit confused.
Yeah. Well, when I began with the national team in 2001. I was in the stroke seat position, so that would be in the stern, looking right at the little coxswain.
Yeah.
And as we progressed, I moved into the bow. So I'm 6'4", about 210 pounds. So as the team got better, I became the smallest one.
Okay. So and you want the lightest one at the front?
Yeah. So I ended up moving to the bow seat in 2002, and I stayed up in the bow of the 8s in racing all the way through to 2008. So in the Olympics in Beijing, I was in the bow seat. Yeah.
Okay. And how many Olympics did you take part in?
I rowed in 2, but my career spanned 4. So in 2000 for the Sydney Olympics, I was just still a very young. I was 20, and they took 12 to the Olympics, and I was the spare that stayed at home.
Oh no.
And then, which was fine. I was happy to be in the Olympic training group the whole year.
Sure.
That was fantastic. And then 2008, after Beijing, I was going through to 2012 still, but I was a spare that traveled with the team to the London Olympics, but didn't race.
So you were in London, but you weren't in the team.
I was in London with the team and in the training center or the Italian training center before training camp before the Olympics. So I didn't row in those 2 Olympics, but I was definitely as close to the team as you could be without rowing. So
yeah. There's one question I want to ask you. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but obviously recent news coming through with regards to the Russians and what they were doing. Just if you don't mind me asking, as an Olympian, how you would feel if you were aware of the other team were basically enhancing themselves in some unscrupulous way. What's your feeling as a team when you know damn well that something's not right, but there's nothing you can say?
Well, it's an interesting question because there's nothing you as an athlete can really do about it. So if you start feeling, and really I never competed against anyone I suspected that was doping. And we won most of the time too. So there was never a fear of, oh, they beat us because. So my answer is really, if I were to compete against somebody, they're doing something that's completely sort of out of my control. Looking at it from the outside, heading into 2016, I felt a little bit sorry for the athletes because I think in the Russian case, there's a lot of pressure from the NSO or the Russian Rowing Federation or Russian Olympic Federation to be doping. And I would think in some cases that luckily in Canada, you can trust what the team doctor is providing you. When he says, oh, I have a cold, take this medicine. So I can take that
Yeah,
without
exactly.
fear that maybe what is in the bottle is actually what on the label too. So
Yeah.
it just seemed very like the Wild West of doping and what was happening in Russia with sneaking into the labs to change the samples, and I had been tested probably 30 to 35 times over my 12
Have you
years.
really?
Oh no, probably more than that. Probably was happening about 4 times a year,
Okay.
I would say. So I'm very familiar with the process.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I bet you are. To me, it's just a great shame that this enhancement and this push to win at all costs attitude, which has really been going on for a long time. I think it's well known that the East Germans were probably one of the worst countries in terms of doing this, and of course it's flowed over into others. But enough of that. I just wanted to hear what your opinion was, especially after apparently the Russians were up to some real deep process of enhancement, especially for the London Olympics.
Had I been competing against them, my answer may have been maybe different than it is.
Yeah, sure. And as you say, your Canadian team or teams were quite successful at that period. And of course, you weren't worried that, hey, we were beaten by someone who's clearly not on the ball there. There's something going on there. So you weren't worried about that.
Yeah, it helps to win in many aspects.
Of course it does. Of course it does. Anyway, so great. Congratulations on getting that Olympian gold. I bet you were on literally cloud 9 when that day came and you crossed the line first.
Well, you
would have been the first one to cross the line first, by the way.
I was. So if you see any photos from it, you can see my arms are in the air first. But it was such a unique experience because my wife was also on the team, the women's team.
Oh, right. Wow.
She was there. So we got to experience not only with my teammates who are some of my best friends, but with my fiance at the time. We got married 2 weeks later following the Olympics. So it was just a very stressful time. So it teaches you how to deal with some stresses and still perform, but then also a very happy time getting married. And it was just
everything slotted into place for you. Yeah, exactly. Very unique. So you've done the Olympics. So when did photography on the professional basis slot into place for you?
I would say that it was leading into the Beijing Olympics, actually. There was a guy on our team, Adam Creek, who was writing a blog for CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcast Corporation. And so he was doing the writing, and we were in Japan prior to leaving to Beijing, because that's our sort of, you acclimatize closer to where you're training, but not in the actual training site, or sorry, racing site. So he said, well, why don't you do a photo blog of our training camp? And I thought about it, and I thought, okay, well, I can do 15 or 20 pictures, because I had been taking photos of our team since 2000, really. And my parents lived close by, so we would have dinners at my parents' house. So I would take photos over the month, get them printed out, put them in an album, and then when all the team would come over for dinner, they would look through the album, kind of like Facebook, but in your hands.
Yeah, exactly right. Open critique session as well.
Yeah. So it was neat. And then I would put the doubles in the print too, so if they saw one they liked, they could take it home with them. And so, but yeah, the first one I really got paid for was that photo blog from our Japan training camp. And
it's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because one of my guests a few shows back, John Lehman from Canada, he followed the Canadian team around and put a lovely selection of photographs together for the your not so successful team that went down to Brazil.
Right.
And he was taking photographs, and he was saying that that he'd been commissioned by the Canadian association, basically, to photograph, and so you earned money off the back of doing a blog with the photographs for the Beijing 2004.
Yeah, so I did that in our training camp, and as soon as we made it into Beijing, I sort of put my camera away.
Sure.
I had to focus on what I was doing, but then afterwards we got some nice pictures of our team. We went to the Great Wall of China and things like that, and then I was actually also starting photography school about a week after we got home. So So that's
Now,
when it all started to begin.
let's talk about gear at that stage.
Okay.
What were you shooting with at that stage? Around about 2004. You said to us that you were doing film and slides. So 2004, we're just getting into digital cameras, are we?
Yeah, I think I had something like, I think it's just over there, but like your regular Canon EOS, whatever. Like you get it at maybe about $500 camera or something like that.
Something like a 40D or I don't know,
Yeah.
did they call it a D40 in those days? Yeah, something of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I think when I went to school and when I was shooting at the Olympics, it was in 2008, it was like that.
Yeah.
30,
Always stayed with
20
Canon. Have you drifted onto other systems, or has it always been a Canon gear that you've stuck with?
It was just a Canon, only because my very first, I walked into this Japan camera, and I said, I just saw it in the case, and I'll have that. And then, of course, it came with a lens. So when I upgraded to the digital, I asked them, is this digital still compatible with my existing lens? And then it just grew from there. So it was never a conscious decision to go from Canon over Nikon, and I've never really been, through rowing, there's all different boats. So if you don't get or equipment and this and that, so there's always, if you don't achieve something, you can either blame the boat, or you can blame or look inward to say, okay, well, what can I do better? So you kind of borrow some of the things like that from sports. So I've never gone down that kind of Canon, Nikon, my gear's better.
I'm a firm believer that you pick a camera up, if it feels right in your hand, that's the one you've got to work.
Yeah. So I don't think I've ever even held another type of camera, really. So hopefully we haven't lost the connection here. Let's see. That wouldn't be good. Let's see if we can fix this. Oh, there we go.
There we are. You're back.
Okay, I'm back. Okay.
Your screen froze up for a second. I think what we'll do at this stage, because I want to show your work, and then I want to talk about the gear that you actually use now.
Okay.
Which I'm assuming that is slightly more upmarket, shall I say, with respect than we'll assume the EOS 40D was, say, for argument's sake, that you started with.
Yeah.
For those that are watching now live on the show, you should be seeing Kevin's, not necessarily his front page, but his page showing his sports photography. And what we're going to do here, Kevin, I'll just select one and I've just flicked through them. And if there's a specific story about the the image, please tell me to stop and I'll go back and flick it on. As we were talking before we started, that this one really does intrigue me. Because she must have taken a hell of a whack here. Tell me a little bit about this photograph first, as it's the first one online here.
Well, it's the most recent one that I've put on the website. That was taken last weekend in Lake Louise, Alberta, in Banff National Park for the Lake Louise Women's Downhill. So this is a pretty, you could call it lucky photo to get, a pretty rare, I suppose. But there's just so much that went into it in terms of, it was my first or second day on the hill. So there's just learning how to, you have to ski into position. And in fact, this was kind of a secondary photo for me. So if you imagine the hill would be to my left and you're shooting up the hill, and for the skier coming over the jump. Now that was the main shot. So the skier goes off the jump and she's in the air. And from the time that they're over the jump till they reach, usually this is just a left-hand turn, till they reach this gate is about 1.5 seconds. So the jump that they're going over is probably about 60 or 70 feet away. And this was taken with a 600 millimeter on a full frame Canon 1DX Mark II. And so this is a full frame. There's no crop to this. So you can imagine how close that was.
Yeah.
It was about maybe, I would say 20 feet. So as soon as you would try and track, but you couldn't track over the jump. You would have to pre-focus on a spot. And then as they were in the air, you were just holding down the shutter. Then I would swing around as fast as I could and try and focus on this gate there that was just an orange gate sitting there. And then if I had time, I would focus on it and then position the gate in the lower sort of right-hand corner and just start holding down the shutter. So it was going at, you can't see, but that was an 8,000 shutter speed. And it was a, like I say, Canon 1DX Mark II. So it was shooting, I think, 14 frames a second. And the first time I did that process and the skier went by, my intention was just to get the skier going by the gate as kind of a secondary shot to the jump.
Sure. Yeah.
And I thought that I'd missed the photo because I was looking through the lens, the camera, and of course the skiers are moving 130 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
And you can't see them go through the frame at all. So for this instance, I had a few that were just skiing by that I thought were kind of neat. But even at 14 frames a second, and I believe that's the shutter speed of that camera with a different special card in it, you'd either get the front of the skis and the back of the skis or the skier right in the center.
Yeah.
At 8,000 shutter speed.
So it looks to me as though she's actually she's made the gate, but I can see her boots come out of the binding there. And she's just messed up completely. She's going now. Her body is going through the gate. So her legs have gone round the gate, but her body's gone through it. What a mess.
Yeah, like I say, I don't know I remember hearing it.
Yeah.
And don't remember seeing it at all because it's just a blur going.
Yeah,
going
exactly
through.
right. Would be.
As soon as I got focused on that gate, the shutter was going down.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's a great shot. Absolutely superb. And when you put it on your screen and put it up to full size, it's quite amazing. I wonder if we can find out the information on there. No, there's no EXIF data. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just out of interest, really.
Oh, right. Yeah, I guess that doesn't come through.
No, it doesn't come through. It doesn't matter. So moving on to the next few images. I'll just go through some some amazing images here where you've caught the guys. And I think what I really like about, obviously now working with, gives you this great, not only the great depth of field, but the composition, but the focus and the sharpness of the image that you've created here.
Yeah, well, even the lens has an interesting story because we won some money for winning gold medal in Beijing. Okay. And when I came back to photo school, I stopped at a local, or in Edmonton actually, or Calgary, stopped at a football game, and of course, on the side of a football game, this person had this big lens, and she let me use it, and as soon as I started using it, I was like, "Hey, I want this." So that was a 600 millimeter, and then so I had to figure out where I was going to get this from. But as soon as I'm usually pretty good. If I want something, then I'll do what it takes to get it. Good. So I knew as soon as I took one picture with that, I knew that I wanted one. So
it's amazing lens, and quite a big lens to handle, I'm assuming. So what are you using? Are you just pure hand holding, or are you using some form of monopod?
No. There are times when I'll hand hold a 600, but that's only if I want to lay on the ground and shoot pretty low. But that's the times that I would hand hold that are very rare. I just use a monopod because you want to have it stable too. Yeah,
exactly. Even at 1/8,000th of a second. That's more than enough. But it's better to have the stability.
Well, especially if you're doing something like rowing, where normally you're I don't know if you can see my hands, but the rowing boat's moving and the what you're on is moving, so you're following too. So
Yes, I'm with you.
you need to really make sure that the shutter speed's high enough if you're shooting rowing from a water, like a boat.
Yeah.
So
You've obviously had an opportunity to get inside
yeah, I mean, it's
some
helpful
changing
to have
rooms
been
here.
an athlete to understand how those
Yeah,
situations
exactly right. Yeah.
work.
And obviously you can trust, hey, I'm a gold medal winner. Can I come into your changing room? Yeah, of course
Yeah,
you can. You know,
yeah,
it's a nice door opener, isn't it? I
yeah.
love the composition of this photograph where you've
Well,
concentrated on the tube, and it's a great. It's almost like a medical type shot
yeah,
you've done here.
we're doing some VO2 max testing here, and I have to thank Andy Clark, who's a retired now photographer, because he helped me a lot after 2008, and he
Yeah.
was the one who cropped this image for me. So what I would do is I would print out a bunch of images that I liked, and I would, in this case, I would go to Vancouver to meet with Andy and have coffee, and I'd bring him a Sharpie pen,
Yep.
and I would say, let's mark on these photos. So then I could see, so you would draw the part that I should crop. So
I'm with you.
it's kind of nice to have that tactile feel when you're going over the photos with somebody. So he did this crop on a little 4:6 picture, and I of course had it a little his whole face, but I mean, it's how you learn. You ask somebody
Yeah,
who's better than
exactly. And I think what really speaks volumes, it's going to sound for me a strange thing to say in actual fact, but it's the negative space for me that in this photo that really is the killer of the whole photograph, that really brings home to it. You know the athlete's doing some kind of testing here, and you can see that obviously to his right, our left, there's a doctor there or someone checking his performance out, and you've got the two main things, the eye and the hand and the tube, or three things: eye, hand, and the tube. It's a very dynamic image.
Well, it's interesting because at that point in my career, I didn't realize what I had, and it took somebody who had years of experience, who was, for whatever reason, like nice enough to spend some time with me. Which, I mean, I thank goodness for my sports background, because I find it really helps when you ask for feedback. You know how to ask for it, and you know how to receive it.
And at the same time, you've got to be mindful of and be prepared to take critique, and sometimes harsh critique, where someone turns around and said, "Sorry, Kevin, this is no good. Go back and try it again." And if you're in a position like that's the only way you're going to learn.
Yeah. Well, it comes from sports, because I mean, I heard that so many times, and like the coach's job is to help you to win the Olympics, and that's not an easy thing to do. So if someone tells you this photo's no good, they're helping you.
Exactly.
Stop taking photos like that, or learning a different way.
I love this one that I'm showing now with this the athlete with the blur. It shows so much movement, sort of strong color, and
well, that's interesting. That's Andre DeGrasse from Rio fame, I guess you could say, in a race in Edmonton. But it is, I guess, taking the time to learn how to do a pan. I mean, you're always learning new skills, but I like this one because of the background, the orange.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so strong. Just moving on to the the rowing 8. This looks like you're in the water here.
Yes.
Got your wetsuit on.
Yeah. Well, it turns. I was doing a photo shoot. That second one you showed with the kayaker.
Yes.
He was wearing a dry suit, and I was on land, and I was doing it. That was for a kind of like a portrait style product shoot with the company. So everybody was in these dry suits except for me. And I said to the guy, I'm like, "Hey, can I use this? Can I have one?" So I got two right here next to me. So they're fantastic because I obviously had to purchase a underwater housing, but these suits look like regular pants and jacket, and you can just use the buoyancy that's in the suit to kind of, you hop in and it's really, and you just sort of let it out, and then you can just float around.
Okay.
So in this case, I know this is in Switzerland during a World Cup, and I just hop in off the dock, and I mean, I've done it. I mean, I've raced there. I've won there many times. Probably been there 12 times in my life. So I know the scenario of where the boats are going to move and when. And in this case, is this Canadian women's team going to, say, walk it down parallel to the dock, or are they going to push off? So it helps that I know them and they know me, and I can ask them the right questions to know where they're going to move. Because this is in the foreground here. This is their blade.
Yeah,
so
I gathered that, yeah.
This is either going to come in front of me, or the coxswain is going to tell them to push off the dock, and that boat is going to be over my head in about 2 seconds, which would be the wrong position to be in.
You don't want to get hit by one of those things, do you?
Well, when it's in this case, it would just be embarrassing. But if you were up,
I mean, people could turn around and say, "Kevin, you should know better. What you doing in that position?"
So, that was a fun time. Yeah.
So this is the type of shot that you were looking to get when that girl had the accident when she crashed into the gate. Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
So the majority of the photographers, which there were about 6 or 7, were pointed. This is uphill. Yeah. This is actually probably about 80 feet away, maybe more. Like this is a big crop. This is about, if I could show you the original, you would be shocked at how small it is. But I mean, you don't want to get in front of something that's moving so fast.
Exactly right.
You've got to be far away. But yeah, so you would imagine this is the one, and then they're going to be to my left in about 2 seconds. So it was a real, and you got these big mitts on, and you're trying to move, and it's a great experience.
Difficult to get everything together. Let me just go into the full frame, because there's 2 photographs I want to talk to you about as regards to the composition and where you were at the time you took it. This one in particular was with this is Ishikura, isn't it, the tennis player?
Yeah.
Where was this one taken?
This was in Vancouver during the Davis. Is it Davis Cup, the tennis? No.
It's Davis Cup for tennis men's.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Canada against Japan, and this is the title match between Ishikuri and the Canadian. And I was in the regular spot with everyone else, just along the side. He's returning a serve, I think. Yeah. But I just thought it was interesting. Obviously, this is a bit into the match, and the sweat coming off of his.
That's the bit that caught my eye as well. The beads of sweat coming off the back of the headband there, which you've caught, which is, in actual fact, is such an important part of the photograph. But it's not the tennis ball or the racket. Obviously, you see the eyes and the grimace in his face, but then you see the beads of sweat. It just sort of sums up the whole story. Yeah, he's in a hard match, and he's straining to beat the guy. Yeah,
well, it wouldn't be there if those beads of sweat weren't off the.
No, exactly right. No, exactly.
So, and it happened that the background was black too. If it's not black, then it doesn't work.
Yeah. No, exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. Let's come out of then go back to the other one, which I wanted to talk about was the water skier, which this is just an amazing capture. Now, when I originally saw this, I got the impression that you were actually on the boat itself. But I'm looking at that rope, and I don't think you are. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm not. I'm up in the very top of the stands.
Oh, okay.
So you're in pretty close proximity to them, but this is again shooting with a 600.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. This is from Pan Am Games. So what you can do when events run over a length of time, you can sort of look and see what the other photographers are doing. So I saw something similar to this.
Yeah.
And then you go and see if you can do it yourself. And it's not the easiest. Like, you see it with your eye, and then it's not the easiest, or it wasn't the easiest thing to do. But
I think if anything, the one thing that comes across me in this particular photograph is, notwithstanding the composition and the way it's been created, but I think you've got to, when the viewers actually see this part of the show, it's the clarity and the, for want of word, and the detail of the wave itself, which the camera and the lens has been able to capture. And it just goes to show you the quality of the gear that you're using there.
Well, it does, and luckily when you're shooting outside in the summertime, it's bright. You can shoot at a high shutter speed with a pretty low ISO. and not have any real degrading quality. So, and from
Just
rowing,
want
I
to
really,
go,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, I just want to go back because there's was it no, it wasn't a photojournalism. If I can find it quickly, I just look at two or
Oh,
three.
I see. If you go to my name, click on the name, that should take you back to the main page. And then,
What is it? I just wanted to look at some street photographs because
yeah.
that's my favorite genre. Now, when you're sort of gear you're taking out when you use this, are you still using the Canon 1DX Mark II or another camera?
It depends. I would say yes. I would take that. I have that. I use that 1DX Mark II or just the 1DX. Yeah.
Majority of the time, yeah.
And it depends what lens. Generally, if I'm doing street photography, I have like a 40 mil, like pancake lens.
I'm with you.
And if I go with my family somewhere, I'll keep the good body, but I'll put the smallest lens on just so it's not so cumbersome.
Yeah.
And then you can, if you just have a small lens on it, it doesn't bring so much attention. Because even if you have a 70 to 200 sort of zoom lens, it's too big, and
yes,
people will see it too quickly. Sometimes I'll take I have a 51 1.2, which is a great, fantastic lens. I had it out this morning, actually. I find it's really nice if it's raining or snowing, but
yeah, we're just having a little bit of a connection problem. It's the 51-2 is a great lens to have. The 40 mil is almost like a pancake lens, isn't it? Yeah. From the Canon mate, which is ideal for street shooting. But I just run through a couple of quick images here from the street, because I think again it's your composition, it's the eye that you use, and the way you see things on the street. And a lot of people that enjoy doing street photography would miss a lot of these opportunities that you've been able to capture. I think that one's great. He's on the phone, and she's looking over the shoulder. She's probably giving him directions and some further. Do you know, this fella here reminds me of a good friend of mine, Alex Lambrex. He took the beard and the moustache off. That's Alex, but yeah.
Well, that was an interesting time, because you spend so much time at the Olympics. That was just outside the Olympic Stadium in Rio. And you spend so much time in you could say it fake scenario. It's not really fake, but it's not real life. So you're moving into zones that aren't really in Brazil. So it was sort of 10 days in, I thought, I got to get out. And it was just walking around the Olympic Stadium. There was also, don't go here, it's dangerous. Or this was in the favela, actually. So I knew with this, I didn't want to have a flash. And so I shot the whole night with the 51-2 because I needed a lot of light.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does create a nice, and actually a lot of these street photos are from Europe.
Well, I was looking at the ones there. I've just come out of the screenshot, looking at some of the ones, especially the bike ones. They look very sort of Amsterdam.
Yeah, they are.
They were. Well, yeah, it's a typical scene from Amsterdam. But mind you, the whole of Europe, you could say, is they love their bikes more than the space that is allowed there in the UK. Looking at the photographs there and talking about your gear, let's just do it. So it's the Canon.
Uh-oh. I'm probably frozen. Shoot. Well,
sorry, Kevin. I was asking you. Canon 1DX. How many bodies have?
I'm not sure if I still come through or not here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
I was asking how many camera bodies do you take out when you're doing your sports photography? Obviously the Canon 1D Mark II, but well, actually three, because if I say I'm shooting a hockey game, I'll have the net cam, and then my main camera, and then the secondary camera. So whatever, zoom lens and wide lens. So you've got your 600 mil, you've got a zoom lens, and you've got a wide lens for the net scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have more. That's not all my gear, but
No, sure.
Yeah, I have a sort of a separate setup for the remote net cam.
Okay. So the interesting point that I wanted to ask you now is, you completed your career, for want of description, in the rowing, Canadian rowing team. You were obviously well into your photography by then. How did that process of you switching out of the sport into becoming the sports photographer come about?
Well, I retired from rowing in 2012, and I had been doing more photography. The best part about it was there were so many photographers coming to take photos of our teams throughout the years that my contacts were pretty or very, very good. So if I had questions, I had very knowledgeable people. And then the CBC was great because they're really helping, or they really like to have former athletes involved in their broadcast team.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So there were some things there, and I did do 3 years of coaching at the local high school for rowing. So then there was a nice sort of transition. At first you think, oh my goodness, I better make some money somehow. I've retired from sport. So the coaching was a nice stable, every day I knew where I was going and I knew how much money I was making. And then the photography jobs over those years were slowly increasing to where 15 months ago in September of 2015, I was no longer needing to coach as the photography jobs were getting too much. But I was still pretty worried, like, am I going to be able to make a go of this? And so I was working really hard at trying to, can I take photos of this or that or that? So it wasn't really pinpointed at sports.
So you're trying to diversify a little bit so that you're covering as many avenues as you can. Yeah, makes sense.
Well, you needed to make some, in order to do the sports, what I liked, I needed to be, I needed to have money.
Exactly.
So otherwise, like, I won't be able to do this. I need to find a different job. So yeah, that September was a pretty scary time, but then the opposite sort of happened. I had more time. I didn't have to be tied down to the coaching, and I really enjoyed the coaching, but with the increase of photo jobs, I couldn't do a good enough job at it. And when you're involved with kids in high school, you can have a really positive impact on them, or if you're not fully into it, then the impact is lessened. So it was a good time to switch out of it. And so now, making a pretty good go of it, and balancing, still trying to be a little bit athletic and exercise with a family, and then photo jobs.
And who are you assigned to with regards to your photography? Are you assigned to a magazine for the sports side of things, or a newspaper, or a TV company, or?
I guess you would just call it I'm a regular freelance photographer who's got, I have just a list of clients I've worked through over the years, and CBC being a big one, and so thankful for the ability and the opportunity to work with them and interact with their team, because it's such a professional organization. I mean, it has to be. And just in terms of like invoicing and contracts and this, and if you have any question, it's not like the editor of the magazine is also doing the invoicing, and also it's like they have the person who's in charge of this, and they have a legal department, and they have a invoicing department, so everything's very professional.
Yeah,
and
just
so then you yourself have to be professional. Yeah,
I think that's one of the things you come out when you decide that you're going to be a professional photographer. Everyone that I've spoken to said, yeah, before you're a professional, you're doing 80% photography, 20% of the other bits and bobs, and as soon as you become professional, it switches 20 to 80.
Yeah,
nice to hear that you've got that sort of background, that you can concentrate on your photography, get the work done, and then the other bits and bobs are slotted in behind for you.
It's not necessarily fun, but I know that the business has to be running. Like there has to be, okay, you send the invoice, you get it back, then everything has to be efficient. Otherwise, you're not going to do what you like to do, because you're not going to be taken seriously. So if you're dealing with, like, I've done some work with Seattle Seahawks, which is the NFL team.
Yeah, I know them.
So if you're dealing with them, you have to act in a professional way. And you should act like that with anybody.
Of course.
You can learn things from companies like that who are obviously know what they're doing.
Yeah, at the top end of running a business, or the franchise, in actual fact, which is the way the NFL teams are run. Quick question. I just want to talk to you very briefly about editing and when you're doing your work.
Okay.
Do you edit your own photographs yourself, or does that go to a third party?
No, I do it myself.
You do that, and do you use Lightroom or Photoshop, or?
I take the photos in RAW. So the process would just be put them into Photo Mechanic, import them, and then select the ones you want, and then select them again. So you're not dealing with a huge amount. And then just drag them from Photo Mechanic into the raw Photoshop, and then edit them all that way, and then export them, and then from Photo Mechanic upload them to the website, which is Photo Shelter.
Okay. Now, when you come to present them on, say they're going to be used in a magazine or a newspaper article, what form do you have to forward those onto? Are they JPEG or TIFFs, or do you have to send the raw file onto them?
No, I'll give them the full res JPEGs.
Okay.
And then if they come back and say, "Oh, this is going to be a double truck image in the magazine," or if this is going to be the cover, and if I trust their editors, then I'll give them the raw. The raw file, because I want it to look the best it can, and I want them to look at the best they can. Exactly. So then I'll make them a separate folder that says raw file, because I don't want to be uploading 100 raw files.
Exactly right. Yeah, because they're enormous files in that from the Canon 1DX.
So if I have a good relationship with the editor and there's a need, and sometimes their ability to edit the raw file for their printing purpose is better than I can do.
Exactly right.
In which case, when I see it printed, I think, wow, they did a great job.
They've done some great work there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's a big thing in actual fact, because I had a question that asked to me a few weeks ago by someone who said, do I send to my client the raw file, or do I send the JPEG? And my immediate thought was, well, send them the JPEG to see what they think, and then send them the raw file. Don't give away that unique thing. Obviously, of course, you've got a copy yourself, but have you had any problems with photographs that have gone adrift in an array somewhere, and you found someone's been using one of your photographs without your permission?
That happens a couple times, and you just have to decide if it's who it is. If it's like, I think it was company in New York City who used the photos, like they didn't really, maybe they did know. But so then I asked for some help so that my email comes across as the right words. Because if you just write it, then they think, oh, this guy's an amateur. But if you ask for some help with somebody who's dealt with that before, it comes across, and they send some money pretty quickly.
They appreciate it's a professional approach rather than someone sort of
like, oops, we use these incorrectly, or maybe not. Yeah. But so you speak to them on the phone and they sort of explain the situation, and they're it was a video thing that had already aired, so they had used these photos without permission.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes, in actual fact, Kevin, I think there's a very important point you make there as regards to making the phone call rather than relying on either the letter or the email, because it makes the point that you're serious about what you're following up on.
And it's a little, if it's a little uncomfortable for you, then it's also a little more uncomfortable for them. Exactly. So it works both ways. So if you want to get some money for your photos, if you just feel strongly about that, then you have to pursue. But if it's someone like a parent of a kid on a little hockey team or something who's used their photo on a Facebook, then it's It's a little different because they're not making it.
It's not, yeah, it's not worth following that part up. It's when it's a company that is going to use it for some form of commercial, more profit at the end of the day, without considering yourself. The guy who's done the hard work.
Yeah. And I think in that case, you need to make the best thing I did was ask for help on how to craft the email, because the words that were used in that, you just don't want to write something like be mean about it and say, hey, what are you doing?
Exactly right.
You're dealing with a professional that either used it by mistake or knows they're breaking the rules, and then, okay, I'm caught, I'm going to give you some.
Yeah, got to own up to it.
That's my thought on that, being a professional photographer for a year and a half. Maybe that changes.
I think, well, yeah, it may change when you find someone who's taking it a little bit too far, but for the time being, it's a process that works. Time of the show, Kevin, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
What has been your inspiration?
Well, there's not one person. I would think I apply most of what, if not all of how I approach the skill of photography to my rowing coach, Mike Spracklin. Now, when you were a rower, it didn't matter really. Your skills were ranked really high. So if you're the fastest and a mean guy, you were still going to be included because you're the fastest. Because you want to win. So you wanted to row with the fastest guy, even if you didn't get along. Now, so how I acquire skill, my pursuit of photography skill acquisition is based on what I learned from my rowing coach, Mike. Now, interacting with people is also now a very important part of what I do. Because maybe they would rather work with somebody that's really nice than somebody who's really talented but can't get along with them. So my parents would definitely be the people who have taught me how to interact with others in a nice manner.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So it's a combination, and I really like that combination because I always felt, and my grandparents too. I would have to include them in forming the person who I was, because to win an Olympics, you have to be very aggressive. You have to be very selfish in a way. Like, I have to concentrate everything on my training. Otherwise, I'm going to come to 4 years and I'm going to lose by 2 seconds. And that doesn't make any sense. You just have to be everything towards that performance. And of course, there's the other photographers that have helped me along. And there's I mentioned Andy Clark earlier, but there's been countless photographers that have.
But you make a very good point there, because you hear this mentioned a lot by people that have been top of their game and the top of their sport, and they say this a lot because at the outset of you taking on a particular interest, where it's rowing, football, soccer, whatever, whatever sport you want to mention, golf even, and swimming, especially swimming, because of the amount of input that the parents have to do, that picking up the kids, taking them to the swimming pool, they're going to do this, the training, the competition. And it's nice from what you said there, that not only the parents have helped you, but your grandparents have helped you with that inspiration that's built into what you are today. Well, it's a very important aspect.
Well, there's a picture of both my grandparents on my mother's side are from Estonia, which is a country fairly close. So they took a boat in World War II to kind of escape. They got a fishing boat with 30 other people and took it across right to Canada. So they do something like that, and it kind of not puts the pressure on, but it sets the tone for the person that you want to be. So they do that, and you can't really say, well, it's cold outside, I don't want to go take photos. My fingers.
No, exactly right.
So,
get out there and do some work. No, very true. Yeah. The other question I like to ask: who would you class, probably at the moment, or you've in the past, who would you class as your favorite photographer?
Well, it's more based on the person than their photos, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I have a favorite, only because I haven't studied as much as I should. But there's people in Victoria here, Adrian Lamb and Darren Stone, who work at the local paper, who they've always been so helpful. And then Chris Morris, who is in Vancouver, who's helped me out. I met him at the Pan Am Games. Again, if I have any questions, is always very helpful. And Johnny Hayward, who I met, who works for Canadian Press, and Daryl Dick, who worked for Canadian Press, who, like I say, for whatever reason, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am without their help and their willingness to share what they've learned. And the same with Andy Clark. All these guys who are the top of their field. And that's what I'm so intrigued with. Having been to the top of rowing, I feel like I know how to interact with people who are at the top of their skill set, even though I'm not there yet. And they're not always, if you're at the top of a skill, whatever it is, it's like you're at the top of a peak of a mountain. And to get there, you have to think a little bit different. You have to be a little bit different. And for me, having dealt with or learning how to deal with those people from rowing, I think has really helped me understand how to interact with people who are at the tops of their specific skill set.
Yes.
And what's so great about photography is you get to meet those people in different avenues. Like whether it's a real estate mogul who needs a portrait, or whether it's a guy up north who runs a sawmill that I was at last month. So there's an immediate sort of connection there, I feel. And so to answer who's my favorite photographer, I should study more, but my favorite photographers right now are the list that I just listed, because they've been so helpful as a person.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, no, I perfectly understand where you're coming from, and it's a great answer. And no one has actual fact answered that way. Basically, people that you're working with are people that you're looking up to with the work that they're producing, which is great. A lot of people obviously answer straight away. It's the old guys like the Cartier-Bressons and the Brassards that they mentioned, but that's a totally different aspect in the way you're looking at it. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a fascinating talking to you, learning and hearing about your Olympic successes and moving into photography, and we've had a great opportunity to look at some really fantastic sports photography. Thank you so much for joining me.
I should mention John Lehman as well, because he's the
John Lehman. Yes,
I met him in Rio, and he's the reason I watched his show with you, and then that's how I got onto this show. So it's so neat how things turn out.
That's right. Yeah, no, John Lehman, lovely guy, and
absolutely
great photographer as well. Thank you for mentioning that, Kevin. Anyway, as I say, thanks again for joining me. It's been absolutely superb talking to you all the way over in British Columbia. We've had a little bit of interference on the line. I hope it hasn't spoiled it for the viewers. We've had some live viewers as well, which is really great. I can never tell exactly how many viewers are watching us, because the YouTube scale never actually performs at the numbers that are on there, but I'll be able to tell you probably after we finish the show. But just to say, my usual sign off to everyone, it's Friday, it's not Thursday, so if you're going out shooting tomorrow, guys, leave your camera bag at home, but please take your camera out. All the best. Bye for now. Absolutely.
Well, Paul, if anybody has any questions, my website's there. Feel free to send whatever you have. I'm happy to answer from whatever, something about the show or a problem or a success you've had out shooting.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Kevin. What I'll do a blog afterwards, and I'll put your email address, not your email address, your website on there as well. But thank you so much for that off, and I wouldn't be surprised you get a few emails through that.
All right.
Thank you again, and good night to everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.